The Montana snowstorm ensnared Emma Wilson in her roadside eatery, where she kept the brew steaming and doors ajar until a troop of shivering soldiers staggered in. Without pause, she nourished them generously, cherishing her late spouse's memory. By morning, her humble gesture of compassion would unite the whole army at the threshold. Hit like and comment where you're tuning in from. Your encouragement delivers more inspiring tales. Now, let's start. The gale wailed like a suffering creature outside Emma Wilson's roadside eatery. Snow descended in dense layers, engulfing the Montana highway and all traces of life beyond. Inside, warmth scarcely clung, but Emma kept the brew steaming. She had no patrons, just quiet, ice on the panes, and a picture of her late spouse in uniform on the counter. That sufficed until the door flew open. Soldiers, frozen, drenched and trembling, tumbled in, faces flushed from the chill. One reached for his wallet. Emma shook her head. "Take a seat, boys. You're safe now. Breakfast is my treat." It had been 3 days since the snowstorm severed the highway, trapping Emma in her eatery. The power wavered, the generator faltered, and supplies were long delayed, but she remained. Not because she had patrons. None had arrived since the storm, but because she couldn't abandon this place. It was more than an eatery. It was her spouse's legacy. Jack Wilson had constructed it after his last tour in Afghanistan. When cancer claimed him 2 years prior, Emma swore to keep the place thriving, even if it meant standing solo in the middle of nowhere with only memories to offer. And then, just past dawn, headlights pierced the swirling white. A military convoy, 2 Humvees and a flatbed truck, slowly halted outside. The doors parted and the soldiers emerged, huddled and weary, lost in the tempest. One, Sergeant Nathan Carter, approached with rigid limbs and chattering teeth. "Ma'am, we were detoured. The storm caught us off guard. GPS is down. No signal. Can we?" Emma was already at the door, guiding them in. "Come in before you turn to ice." She didn't probe, didn't check IDs, just served pots of stew, piles of flapjacks, biscuits, bacon, coffee, all she'd left. When one soldier tried to pay, she offered, a weary smile. "You paid when you enlisted." Outside, the tempest intensified, but inside Emma's eatery, there was warmth, chuckles, and the kind of peace only a soldier could grasp. By dusk, the eatery had become a haven. The storm outside roared against the windows, but inside the soldiers were warm, fed, and steadily reviving. Emma moved quietly among them, refilling coffee mugs, fetching extra blankets from the storeroom, and tending the fire near the old brick hearth Jack had built with his own hands. Sergeant Nathan Carter sat by the window, watching snow stack higher against the glass. He kept glancing at Emma, as if puzzling over why someone would do all this without expecting anything back. "You're not concerned about supplies?" Heffenly asked. Emma paused, her hand on a worn coffee pot. "Concerned? Sure, but Jack always said, if you've got more than someone else in a storm, you share it. No one freezes on our watch." Nathan nodded slowly. "Your spouse was military?" She smiled, a blend of sorrow and pride. 22 years Army. Came back and built this place for the town. We lost him to cancer, but not a day passes I don't feel him here." The younger soldiers listened in silence. A few bowed their heads. One wiped his eyes. Emma noticed. She didn't comment. Dignity mattered, especially to men bearing so much already. At midnight, the generator sputtered its last. The lights dimmed, then faded. There was a moment of quiet. No panic, just darkness and the sigh of a storm that hadn't relented for nearly 12 hours. Emma lit an oil lamp from under the counter and set it in the room's center. "Looks like we're camping tonight, boys." She distributed flashlights, pulled quilts from the back, and even found a deck of cards from an old drawer. Laughter resumed, soft, thankful. Nathan pulled her aside before resting for the night. "Emma, you saved us. You know that, right? We were a meal from giving up. No fuel, no food. We'd have frozen out there." Emma's voice was soft. No, son. You save us every day. This was just breakfast. Nathan looked like he wanted to say more, but didn't. He simply nodded, eyes misting, and joined the others on the eatery floor. Outside, the storm roared. Inside, Emma stood alone for a moment, whispering to Jack's photo on the wall. They found their way here, honey, just like you always said they would. Emma woke before dawn, the storm's howl reduced to a low, persistent grumble. She moved through the eatery on tiptoes, mindful of the sleeping soldiers curled under quilts and piled blankets. The small gas stove rattled as she boiled water, humming a tune Jack used to whistle on calm mornings. She looked out the frosted window. The snow had risen another foot, burying road signs and nearly hiding the convoy's vehicles. With a sigh, she prepared a modest breakfast. Oatmeal with honey, fresh fruit she'd stashed in the cooler, and hot tea. As she worked, she heard a quiet exchange near the back. She paused just long enough to catch Sergeant Carter's voice. "Sir, ma'am, we need to not hear," came a low reply from deep inside the kitchen doorway. Emma recognized the voice. Lieutenant Colonel Ethan Powell, commanding officer of the convoy, tall, composed, his uniform dusted white with snow. Emma steadied herself, smoothing her apron. The lieutenant stepped into the light, eyes meeting hers with respect. "Emma." "Wilson," he said, voice gentle but firm, "your compassion has kept my men alive." She nodded quietly, returning his salute. "They're soldiers. They serve this country. I serve breakfast." He studied her for a moment, then gestured toward the dining room. "We'd like to help. We have supplies, fuel, power generators, extra. Rations. Let us repay you." Emma set down a steaming mug. "You don't repay kindness, you pass it forward." He gave a small, respectful nod. "Then please allow us to keep your generator running and the heat on. We'll share what we have." She hesitated, the weight of responsibility heavy in her chest, but Jack had taught her pride was a luxury in a storm. "All right," she whispered, "but then you're cooking for us." Laughter drifted from the dining room as soldiers stirred awake, their breath visible in the cold air. Soon the kitchen filled with the sounds of clanking pans and murmured jokes. Emma watched the men she had saved become her partners in keeping everyone alive. By midday, the convoy had transformed the eatery into a makeshift outpost. Portable heaters buzzed, extra lights banished the dim corners, and soldiers formed lines, tar-filled coffee cups. Emma moved among them, a proud conductor of this unconventional symphony. Lieutenant Colonel Powell approached her again, holding a clipboard and a crisp photograph of her eatery, flanked by military vehicles. "I'd like to officially recognize your service," he said. "These men nominated you for an Army Commendation Medal. It's not much, but it's a token of our gratitude." Emma's hand flew to her heart. She blinked back tears. "I don't need medals, I need my eatery." He smiled kindly. "That's why the Army is setting up a temporary supply route through here. You'll never run out of supplies, coffee, food, heat, until the highway opens again." Emma stood in stunned silence as the lieutenant detailed the plan. Outside, the storm raged, but inside her eatery there was something stronger. A bond forged in snow, service, and quiet heroism. The storm showed no mercy, but Emma Wilson's eatery had become an unwavering beacon. Word of the makeshift outpost spread through the convoy's radio channels, and by late afternoon, more support arrived. A field kitchen truck rolled up beside the eatery's back entrance, its large oven humming. Soldiers in black parkas carried crates of supplies, canned vegetables, fresh bread, insulated jackets, and even sacks of coal for the old brick hearth. Emma watched from the doorway as the soldiers unloaded, her heart swelling with gratitude and humility. She recalled Jack's words, "When you open your doors in a storm, you open hearts for life." Now her small eatery was the heart of survival for dozens of men and women who had sworn to protect their country. Inside, the atmosphere was electric. Uniformed cooks and eatery staff, soldiers and civilians alike, worked side by side. Emma found herself teaching Sergeant Olivia Reed, a culinary specialist, how to flip flapjacks on the flat top. Reed laughed when a flapjack landed mostly on the floor, and Emma winked as she scooped it back onto the skillet. In the corner, Nathan Carter sat with a group of young privates, showing them how to play poker with mismatched chips and a deck missing 2 cards. Their laughter echoed against the wooden walls, mingling with the hiss of steam from coffee machines and the crackle of the hearth fire. Lieutenant Colonel Powell approached again, this time carrying a steaming mug of Emma's signature stew. "Thought you might like a taste of home," he said softly. Emma took a cautious sip, nodded approvingly and said, "It's perfect." He hesitated, then added, "We have orders to expedite the supply route, but the brass wants to meet the woman who started it all." Emma's brows knitted. "Meet them?" Powell handed Hera a folded piece of paper, a formal invitation. "Tomorrow morning at the base headquarters, they want to present you with something." That night, after the eatery closed and the soldiers settled into tents pitched nearby, Emma sat alone at her favorite booth, the stormlight outside the window flickering against the snowdrifts. She traced her fingers along Jack's photo. "What are they giving me, Jack?" she whispered, voice barely audible. She remembered her promise to keep the eatery alive. But tomorrow would bring a new test, one that could change everything she thought. She knew about service and sacrifice. Emma Wilson closed her eyes and allowed herself to hope. Emma Wilson awoke before sunrise, the storm's fury finally easing to a steady, gentle fall. She dressed in her best, jeans, a wool sweater, and her spouse's old army cap, its brim frayed but cherished. Clutching the formal invitation, she made her way through the snow-packed grounds to the convoy's temporary headquarters, a large heated tent illuminated by floodlights. Inside, officers and enlisted soldiers alike gathered in respectful silence. Lieutenant Colonel Ethan Powell stood at the front beside a polished wooden podium. Emma felt her heart pound, a mix of nerves and pride pooling in her chest. The colonel cleared his throat. "Today, we honor not only a citizen, but a hero. In the face of hardship, she opened her doors and her heart to soldiers in need. No questions asked, no payment expected. Her selflessness saved lives and lifted spirits. She embodies the very spirit of this nation." He stepped aside, and a young captain approached, holding a small, velvet-lined box. Emma's hands trembled as the captain opened it to reveal an Army Commendation Medal, its ribbon gleaming. She gasped softly. "On behalf of the United States Army, we present you, Miss Emma Wilson, with this medal and our deepest gratitude," said the captain. The assembled soldiers erupted into applause, their cheers echoing through the tent. Emma stood, tears brimming, as Sergeant Nathan Carter rose and saluted her, his voice clear. "Thank you, ma'am, for everything." Emma accepted the medal, her voice steady despite the emotion. "I did what anyone would do. This community, this eatery, is built on respect and service. Today, you all reminded me why." She paused, looking at the faces around her, haggard but hopeful, weary but grateful. Lieutenant Colonel Powell stepped forward again. "We also have one more gift." He gestured to a long table where supplies were displayed, barrels of oil, sacks of flour, fresh produce, and a brand new generator. "This will keep Emma's eatery open until the road clears, and long after." Gasps of relief rippled through the crowd. Emma's eyes widened. She turned back to Powell. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll keep giving," he replied with a warm smile. "The world needs more people like you." Outside, the sun broke through the clouds, its rays glinting on snow-laden pines. Emma stepped out, medal pinned to her sweater, and inhaled the crisp morning air. She looked toward her eatery, its windows glowing with promise. Emma Wilson had served breakfast. In return, she'd been served hope, honor, and a future as bright as Montana's sunrise.